of all, it's an absolute delight to be moderating a discussion like this between the masters and the new emerging stars. I pretty much started my career and grew up um, as a journalist with the men out here and many more of that vintage. As I was a cub reporter in Business Standard in 2000, and one of the first people I met was Bharat Bhai and Raamdeo ji. And these are really the people who piqued my imagination, made me curious about investing, compelled me to learn more about investing. In fact, only after meeting Raamdeo ji did I really start reading very aggressively on Buffett because I was so enamored, because he was so passionate and enamored. And it became my life's goal to, seek an appointment with Mr. Buffett and do an interview and meet him face to face. By God's grace and Buffett's kindness, that sort of happened. It's one tick in my life's goal. And of course, these are people I've known for 25 odd years. And here are people I have just met a few minutes ago and spoke to them only this morning. So that's a really nice combination to be able to, mishmash thoughts of people who I've known for 25 years and people I have not known for 25 minutes, although we know what they hold in their portfolio, etc., to be able to present to this very august audience. It's a very unique opportunity. Thank you so much, PMS Bazaar, for this privilege. So, this format of over the next 30, 40 minutes, we will go through this discussion in a format that I call a collaborative debate. This is a term I have borrowed from Daniel Kahneman, who is one of my favorite personalities in the world. And, he says, he had this critique called Gary Klein, and he was his biggest critique. Daniel Kahneman, as you all know, is a Nobel laureate. And his idea of the world is that intuition largely does not work. It works in certain conditions. But Gary Klein was his biggest critique. And he would constantly, in the world of academics, you keep busting theories and be very critical and sharp-tongued. So Daniel called Gary and said, hey, listen, you are criticizing me too much. Why don't we just meet up, work together, and then see where the truth really lies. And they went into this expedition for 9 years. They worked together. He says they fought miserably. They became really friends and almost like family, and came out with a report called The Conditions of Intuitive Thinking, a Failure to Disagree. So that was the thing. So here we're going to construct something here. Of course, we all know that in the world of investing, everybody has a unique style and a philosophy, and it has to suit your temperament also. But there are some basic fundamentals and truths that don't really change, that everybody abides with. So we will try to push and see where is the meeting point between the masters who have been there, done that, and still keep getting challenged every day, and they keep challenging themselves, and the new emerging stars who are not only challenging themselves, but also challenging the previous generation. So sorry about that long winding thing. I'll ask Bharat Bhai and Raamdeo ji to excuse me because I'm going to start with the new ones first. So Jigar, please articulate your understanding of what is Raamdeo ji's and Bharat Bhai's investment strategy, and where is it that you think differently?
Yes, thank you for putting me on the spot right away. No, it's an absolute honor to share the stage with people who we have, idealized, learned so much from, and, try to sort of look on where we can incrementally add a lot of value. I think the fundamental place where we differ is the fact that for far too long, a lot of people have believed that, once you identify a great company, that's where the job ends. And the distinction between a great company and a great investment is not, materially different. You could find a company that is growing, say, 15, 20% CAGR on fundamental value. You can take a free cash flow, earnings per share growth. To assume that the stock price and the fundamental value is lockstep correlated along the way is not something that lies a historical precedence in, right? You can look at, n number of business. I could look at Coca-Cola, for example, right? Warren Buffett bought it in 88. Till 98, it was a phenomenal business and a phenomenal investment. For the next 19 years, the earnings doubled, the share price didn't. It was absolutely flatlined, right? So the ability to distinguish the difference between the two is what Buoyant has been running on for the past 6.5 odd years. I think it's not without reason. India has been, if you look at the number of multi-baggers across the globe, India would stand out, right? And India was a very undiscovered market until a few years back. Here on, I think, we'll likely see a scenario, especially with two conditions. One is that a large amount of businesses that were to be discovered has been discovered. And two, Federal Reserve has far long kept, at least our crop of generation is all a QE generation, right? Sirs have operated at the time when there was a quantitative tightening. Since 94, the Federal Reserve balance sheet has not come off. So you identified a great company and more money was flowing into those assets, and therefore you made a mistake. It was a time correction. Now I think that cycles would be even more pronounced, and that's where I think the fundamental sort of difference would lie.
Fair enough. So what I hear from you is that you are contesting, if we were to say, as the media puts it, and he may also like to be called like that he's the Warren Buffett of India. And no, okay. So, so you are challenging the sell strategy for a great company and a great stock.
So what's the question?
So the question he's asking is that Coke was a great company, Buffett bought into Coke, but in the first 10 years, it went 10x. But thereafter, for the next 30 years, 20 years, it has done nothing. In fact, to add to that, Pepsi has been a bigger outperformer than Coke during that period. So what is the wisdom in holding on to a great stock to only see your own outperformance diminish over the next 20 years?
Yeah, so clearly, maybe I've learned from that. If you see the investment strategy we have kind of came out in 2013-14 was QGLP, so quality and growth. Now, he rightly said, a growth company, high quality, high growth company you buy at right price. I mean, whenever you're buying, you have to buy with margin of safety. You do that, and then it works brilliantly well. Then what happens is, you are so happy with your success, and you fall in love with that stock, and you overstay with that company. So that remains a mistake. Practicing that after 3, 4, 5 years, and clearly the stock prices move way ahead of what the growth is going to come through and things like that. So at some point of time, you got to either pick up some profits. I mean, you have to harvest, as Howard Marks says. Your job is to buy bargains and keep harvesting. So we didn't probably that buy and hold style of Buffett. Maybe we have overlived, because times have changed and markets move so much ahead of the earnings potential of the company, and we keep thinking that it'll keep going up. So I think that's where some mistake is there. At that level, you have to harvest your bargains and move on and buy some other bargain. That I think clearly we have done the same mistake. I clearly know that we have overstayed with the stock, and particularly in a country like India, where economic dynamics are pretty, cyclical or not that stable. Laws keep changing, governments keep changing. So in that situation, to expect that great companies will remain great for very, very long time, that's going to be fewer and fewer companies. So clearly you have to harvest your bargains. So I would think that we have overstayed with our success. So that we need to correct as we go along.
Fair enough. Point taken. So, Bharat bhai, do you agree to that? Is there I'll put my two bits into this. Uh, I've also thought about this question a lot. I've also thought about this question a lot in terms of why, Buffett is such a smart guy. Why didn't he do it? One is, of course, the anchoring bias that, you're anchored, you've storied it, you've told the world this is the greatest company in the world, and therefore you can't just reverse your position. That is one. Second thing is, coming to the investing scene with the knowledge that even the super investors have not compounded returns at more than 25% across the world, right? Even the top 25 investors across the world have not done 25%. So if you did 10x in 10 years, you know that there is going to be a long period where you will underperform, but then you will, you'll come to a slightly better than average kind of return. While the redeployment risk continues to be a very big part of investing. So in this context, can you articulate the sell strategy?
These descriptions of the masters and others, at least as far as I'm concerned, is a misnomer. In investing, one of the greatest joys is a constant opportunity to learn. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a devoted student that way till the time I hang my shoes or I die. And therefore, uh, you know, the belief that we have mastered or kind of reach an attainment point is an act of probably self-delusion. That is something that I would like to mention right at the beginning is a statutory warning and a disclaimer. The point that Jigar made, I think, is a very, very valid point, and there can hardly be any debate about it. Ultimately, in any investment or in any opportunity which does wonderfully well for a length of time, it lulls you into a sense of complacency. And therefore, it is not a question of intellect not recognizing the changes. It is a mental block or a sense of settled complacency that you reach, whereby you lower your guard and you probably start ignoring things fraying at the edges, or you start ignoring some of the warning signs. That said, equally there is a danger in every great business. There are many false alarms before they rise. I mean, take for example something like Asian Paints. In 30 years, a rupee is converted into 1,000 rupees. But that journey has not been free from the violence. It has gone through such horrible violence of ups and downs that at what stage do you regard a fall as a false fall? And at what stage do you regard a high as a wrong high is really the mental strength and the capability that you develop. If you remain a student, if you remain a watchful observer and an agile participant rather than floating with the success of what you have done, then I think you are able to guard against at least relatively more failures, and that you will not succumb to many of them. You still will succumb to some because that bias is very hard to knock off. And success is a huge opium, and therefore it addicts your mind to the possibilities of the failures. And therefore it becomes very hard to recognize that change. But that is the job one has to do. And if you remain agile, then at least you prevent relatively number of those errors. You still will make some, but you will be able to reduce those number of errors. Also, from a fundamental perspective, I would say one more thing. Ultimately, great returns are created by compounding. There is hardly any debate about it, no matter whatever lens you cut it from. The greatest returns are made from compounding. In a long compounding journey, invariably there are periods when there are distractions and there are short-term dazzles. Those dazzles, how to avoid and how not to fall for them, and how not to hate what you own and rather love what you continue to own, which is worthy, is a very delicate balance. It's not an easy balance to achieve. And therefore, unless and until that mindset remains of an ardent student all the time, forever that you are on a journey, that you keep evolving the rules of the game, you keep understanding fundamentally your own capability, is the only trick probably which will help you. Now, one isolated example of somebody like Buffett, whether that is an exemplification of that failure or not, I would probably reserve my opinion on that. I would not go that path. I would only say this, that over a period of time, fundamentally the capability has to manifest itself into number of such prudent and wise long-term successes created over a period of time, and relatively less number of those successes which faded out and where you failed to recognize them in reasonable time. As I mentioned, some failures will still occur, but how many you really get them right? Because we must not forget, in a great compounding journey, even a modest return after that great journey is a disproportionately large amount of return on the original investment. And therefore, failure to recognize the virtue of that also is a significant scene in investing. So it's never an easy question to answer, but it's a most important question to be answered.
So, quickly, if both of you can articulate, uh, what is a good sales strategy? To your mind, how have you tweaked your sales strategy after recognizing the fact that there is a golden period after which you need to offboard? Is it just valuations? Many a times fund managers say, unless the company doesn't stop delivering, we don't exit it. We don't care about valuations that much. But is valuation really the clincher, or is it the company or management or anything fundamentally apart from price changing?
I can say only with the hindsight that what we could have done. See, because analysis comes after you have failed. So then there are all sorts of analysis possible. But when you leave the moment, and particularly when I see that still the valuation range is that makes me comfortable, because my style is to anticipate the growth. I mean, the real thing is that anything of the future you put in your investing style, you better be right or approximately right. So growth is very fundamental part of my investing style, and it's a gambling actually. When you put growth as a cornerstone of your investing, it's a kind of a speculation, because nobody knows the growth, and since nobody knows the growth, clearly putting stress on that, and particularly after 4 5, see, one thing I was not knowing is that high growth is not possible for very long time. Even very high growth companies, after 3 4 years of 35 40% growth, it gets tired. But I didn't know the numbers. I thought if a company is growing, it's doing well, it's a consumer company, and all the analyst companies, they are guiding for a continued 25% growth, I have to accept it. But what happens is external environment changes and suddenly the growth collapses. Say COVID happens, or say demonetization happens. So suddenly the company's growth collapses, and the stock is, say we bought at 20p and stock is at 80p, and then the growth collapses, clearly the price will collapse. And then you are holding it, and now your holding is so big that when you go to sell the stock, actually you are destroying the value yourself. So then you say, let me not sell. Then you get handcuffed in the situation. I'm talking about I would say, iShares. iShares, I bought at 6,000 crores market cap, and so this will connect with you very well. It went to 85,000 crores market cap. At 85,000 crores, I could see some guys, they said, Raamdeo, are you going to have Eicher Motors for breakfast? You know, you're so, so I was getting all the signals, but the analysts estimate 40% growth next year. And next year, it collapsed. Like actually the growth turned out to be minus 10, 15%. So obviously your ATP is not going to sustain. And that's what really happened. So on the whole, I made a lot of money. It never went below, say, 4x or 5x. But I had 10x. That got destroyed. So, this is the true story. But if this is where the private money and public money makes a huge difference in investing. Buffett is about the private money. We are all about public money. We are being appraised on a yearly basis, 3-year basis. I don't know what all they see. So, I got evolved as a private money guy.
So I want to ask you a loop back to the previous point. So what is the learning from there? That not to trust the analysts?
No. See, no. An analyst is doing very honest job. See, we are allocating. Nobody is wrong. You have to do your job well. You have to do your job well. That you cannot blame anybody.
So it continues to be business delivery for you. It's not valuations.
Both are interlinked. If 35-40% growth comes, I don't care a damn. Because if not this year, next year what will happen is that this year, despite 40% growth, the PE will derate, and next year when the 40% growth comes, I will just speed through. So that's where consistency of growth is extremely difficult characteristic. Let me tell you. I'm learning as I'm underperforming. So.
Yeah. Bharat bhai.
I failed to answer the question that you had earlier asked.
So Mike.
Sir. Hello. Yeah. I failed to answer that question that you had earlier asked.
Still closer.
When you talked about, because I look at you, then Mike. You made a question that even the history of super investors shows that nobody has made a long-term 25% plus kind of compounding. But that's in the nature of the things. It's so tough to make, forget about 25%, even significantly lesser than that on a long-term basis. 25% means you double your money every 3 years, and with the power of compounding, that number becomes like a gigantic one. And therefore, to expect that 25% is something rather pedestrian is the classic immediacy mistake or psychological error that you make, where a number you view only in the short term rather than in the power of it in the long term. Barring probably narcotics trade or running a prostitution racket, you can't really make 25% plus kind of long-term returns where really very little investment is needed and all the profits are there to be kept. And therefore phenomenal ROC and great growth, because these are generally the businesses of great growth. So we should not underestimate the power of any healthy double-digit compounding over long run. I will go down to that path. The 25% is a great number to hold on to, but any healthy double-digit on a long term is a phenomenal number to look at and to deliver. The other part that you talked about, the growth and the value, to my mind, that debate probably is little in a nuanced way structured. It is never either or, it is always both. You need a growth. Without growth, businesses start fraying at the edges. At some stage, they stagnate, then they decline, they decay, and they die. Therefore, growth is a vital elixir that a business needs in order to grow. In the law of nature, nothing remains where it is. If it doesn't progress, it declines and decimates. Therefore, you have to have a growth. At the same time, it can't be any meaningful contention that growth can be paid at any price. It has to be paid at a price which is sensible and reasonable. And there is mathematics of investing. There is an art part of investing, but there is a mathematics of investing. That mathematics will give you the answer. Whether you want to pay attention to it or you ignore it in your belief about the future is a separate issue. But the mathematics gives you the answer. The growth and the value is both an integral part. To say that any value can be paid for an assumed growth would be a classic misnomer. As I was mentioning, there is that art part which is vital, and I would say in the 100 marks, art is a greater percentage than the science. But science is important. And what you feed into the science is critical. And how you treat science is also equally critical. You may choose, science may give you an answer, but you may choose to ignore it. Art may try to put you in a state of enthrall and charm and ignore an answer that is being given. And that links back to that earlier issue that you may fall in love with what you own, which is done dazzlingly well. And it blinds you psychologically into recognizing things which are changing. And therefore, the classic error of overpaying may come about. Ultimately, at every price, you can set up an equation that for a given growth, what is the implied return? And for that price, what is implicit in terms of the growth in that price? These questions science can answer. And if you listen to science, then you know what you have to do and whether you think the answers are reasonable in the context of value. So to say that the value per se probably will be less important or growth is less important, I would say would be doing injustice to either. Both are critical, both are vital, and they both remain forever at the front stage of your mind in order to keep aligning the equation and see the ghosts when they are really the ghost, and avoid the traps of the red herrings. Hard to say, hard to do, but important to keep in mind.
So I'll loop this. I'm sorry, this question is taking a little longer, but I think this is a very important question. So I'll take one more question on this, which is, I have often heard Sameer Arora say that I've been a long-term investor in HDFC Bank, but I never intended to be a long-term investor. Every year you evaluated the company delivered and you held on, and therefore you're holding on to that stock for 20, 25 years. Now, look at the scenario that Raamdeo ji pointed out, where there was a huge blip in sales in Aisha's. You look at any respectable franchise in India. We are a growing economy. Consumption is likely to boom. Of course, in many products, you can argue the penetration is high, so slow ho jayega. But there is investment side infrastructure. Everywhere you can make a reasonable case of a good long-term trajectory. And if there is a management which is already proven, then it's a plus plus. When you see growth slowing down, even in these franchise, whether it is some macro condition or something specific to that segment or entry of a foreign player, whatever it is, how do you deal with that situation? Do you exit and then you say, okay, let the price come down, we know this is a bad phase, and then we'll re-enter? Or you think that, how do you know where it'll end, where it'll go down, and will you get an opportunity to enter again? A big block will be available. How do you tackle that? A temporary blip in growth, but a long trajectory that you can see.
Well, I'll answer it this way. In the trajectory, number one, in trajectory of any great long-term compounding machines, there will be periods of mediocrity that you will encounter, and you have to learn to live with that. Psychologically, that is one of the greatest opportunities as well as possibly one of the greatest failures. Inability to recognize that the mediocrity that you have encountered is a temporary one is a greatest act of victory. Inability to recognize that mediocrity is not temporary but permanent, inability to recognize that is a source of a great failure. So that's one. Secondly, as I mentioned, ultimately, every prize with a judged value that you have in mind can be converted into a mathematical equation. Whether you want to pay attention to it and how you want to regard it is a choice that you make. And therefore, that would, I suppose, vary from individual to individual as to how they deal with it. Thirdly, psychologically, it is usually found to be difficult when you disengage to get engaged again. And therefore, for a temporary squabble with your wife, you think about a divorce first and remarriage is a very tough choice to be made. It's not a very sensible or easy proposition to be made. The trick is to recognize whether the squabble is relatively minor and one-off, or whether it is more fundamental and a series of events where squabble is just an exemplification, but a disease is more serious.
So if it's a 3 year blip, you would say just hold on.
But who knows? I mean, whether it is 2, 3 years, only in hindsight you will know. You do not know when you are making that decision. And therefore, if we think that it is 2, 3 years itself is a very timing kind of a view that you are making. Fundamentally, I'm repeating, the equation is very clear. Price and whatever is the judge value. The value judgment can be right or wrong. That's a separate issue. But price and value equation can be converted into a neat equation. That neat equation gives you all the answers that you need. Whether you pay attention to it and you regard it the way you do is a choice that you have.
Sure. So this is not a one-way street, and I don't want you guys to boycott me after this session. So Amit, have you found an answer to this? What is the right sell strategy? I mean, do you stay with the stock if you see there is going to be a blip, or do you do in and out so that you avoid a certain phase? But how do you get the timing right? That's a big question then.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for having me with such great people on the desk. So about the selling strategy, typically, we at Stallion, like that is how we think about it. We do cut our losers out, okay? Now, if a stock is growing fast, okay, and the opportunity size is fast, like large, then you have nothing to worry, okay? 20% drawdowns are good buying opportunities. They are not selling opportunities. If there is a change of terminal value, like in gold finance business or something like that, you cut down the stock on day one. So that is how we think about it. What are the others? So it depends on the trigger. Based on the trigger, we make our decisions. There's no one-way selling strategy that works. And selling is more difficult. See, there are 4 decisions that we have to make. What to buy, how much to buy, when to buy, and when to sell. The when to sell part, for us, there are 3-4 strategies that we use, and I can tell you all the 3-4 things that we use. We cut out the worst 10% performing stock in every 1-2 years. We cut it off. We believe that we are wrong. The markets are right. If the stock starts doing well again, the fundamentals start doing well again, we will come back in the stock. There is absolutely no emotion in our decision making. Stocks are girlfriends. Stock market is wife. So that is how we think about it.
So that's the opposite of what a value investor will think. If you have conviction in a
value
stock, you
is,
have got
still
into
there.
a stock, it goes down, you should have the stomach to hold on even average. But that's...
Is very different. I mean, I'm telling you, your strategy has to be very different if you have a private money and if you are running a public money. And larger the money, see, you are running a small public money, you will still be not that much in limelight. But if you are running a large mutual fund or something like that, you are every day in the news or you are very conspicuous. I think the strategies, the external environment forces on you. So I think humanly it is you are isolated. we're underperforming, nobody is there, you're right, you're wrong. So that forces, in private money, who is going to ask you any question? You can
Correct.
sit through, 3 years, 4 years, you can sit through. I'll tell you, I bought, okay, let's talk about a stock, okay? So, I bought Maharashtra scooter, okay? So what happened, I made a lot of money in Hero Honda. See, this is the real journey. I mean, we can keep talking books, but like Kahneman, what is his name? This guy, slow and fast.
Daniel Kahneman.
Daniel. He has
Daniel
not made
Kahneman.
money in the stock market. He's written a good book. Okay. So, so
Now I'll tell you
So,
something which will make
yeah,
you
yeah.
hate
Yeah,
me
yeah.
even more.
yeah. So what I'm saying is, I bought so after making a lot of money in Hero Honda, I said, now Rajiv Bajaj is fantastic. And I admire him, that group and everything. Now we have missed Bajaj Auto, let me make money and let me make up for it. So I found a holding company which was owning some percentage of Bajaj Auto, which was available at 70% discount. So I told my dealer, just keep buying. I kept on buying. I lost the track. How much I bought? I bought 5% of the company. Okay. I ended up buying 5% of the company. Then at 400, 300 something. So then I said, now stop. We stopped it, and the Bajaj Auto call was right. Bajaj Auto doubled, but my stock went down by 10%. सोचिए उल्टा हो गया काम. So 8 years, 2005 I bought, 2000 till 14, I didn't make any money. And Bajaj Auto went 3, 4, 5x, whatever. The discount of the holding company went to 90%. And then they did the reorganization, and Bajaj Finance and Bajaj Funds, Finserv Bajaj Holding was put into the stock. And that made the stock fly. From 400, the stock is now 5200 at 80% discount again. So what I'm saying is that this kind of patience I cannot bring in public money. Please understand, these are two different things. Color of the money is same, but it's a different money. Probably public money is a digital money, and private money is a, kacha note hai. So,
So, Amit,
Sorry.
I have a question for you, which is, if you constantly keep evaluating your portfolio based on how much it has gone down and keep cutting down, what is the level of conviction that you have in your investment idea to begin with? Hold that thought, think about it. Jigar has a question for Raamdeo ji.
Sorry, just one question, sir. We have all learned how skin in the game is important. We typically follow your sort of strategy, let Buoyant invest all our money. When you put that out, how do you then contrast that public money is different from the way in which you are running your money? People look up to you and where you have invested, and they would then not then expect Motilal to also follow the same sort of tenacity with which you are investing your own money. So how do you contrast the two?
I'll tell you, we compromised in 2014 when we started seriously accepting public money, that we merged private money into public money, 100%, so that there's no conflict. I behave exactly in fact, my private investment behavior has changed to public investment behavior, and it has hurt me personally. So that's the cost we are paying. That's the cost. So now, because there is a synergy in the skin in the game, I have to change. I have to bring up. I'm not going to give up. I'll put every iota of my blood to bring up my public investment strategy, which is acceptable and which is fair. Now, what I will do, I don't know. I'm reading. I'm listening to Bharat Bhai. I'm listening to you guys. So, as he said, we are a student all the way. So, I think I'm in KG1 again.
Amit, on your conviction levels, when
My
you cut.
conviction level is not on a stock ever. It's on a framework that is making us buy the stock. If the framework is that we are buying stocks which are gaining market share in an industry, like any stock which is growing 2 times faster than the industry, reinvesting capital at 30, 40%, whatever that is, with a large competitive advantage, typically the framework says that these kind of stocks will not underperform for a very long period of time. We are betting on the framework. And if the framework says, because you cannot, between a man who speaks about conviction and a man who speaks about risk management, always put your money on risk management. Don't go for conviction, because convictions will change based on new information that will come in the market, right? And convictions are all
But in
stock
the end,
conviction
whatever
is
your framework may be, whether it is industry growth, company growth, whatever it is, in the end, you are taking that call to buy a company at a certain price. You sell it at a certain price. So what you do at that price is what is a reflection of, how much faith are you putting in that company and how much are you paying for it?
No, decisions change. If business dynamics change, business models change. So if you just understand broad market behavior, this is my way of looking at things. Today, if you take the top 1,000 Nifty companies, this is, let's say, the median P line, because it's an easier way, not the right way to do valuation. This is the median P line when Nifty P is 25P. On the right hand side, which is like 50, 60P stocks, are B2C companies, technology companies, and you've got some MNCs. On the left hand side, you've got B2G businesses, PSU banks, which are the low, cheap companies, and PSU banks, and you've got commodities. These are not great business models. Now, you can create value, large long-term value, by buying the right-hand side only. But in every 3-year period, out of the 1,000 stocks which are there in this circle, 100 will go from 15, 20p. I'm just, for the lack of a better word, I'm using p, but p is not the right way. 100 companies will go from the 10, 15p to become 50, 60p companies. This will happen because of change of market leadership, growth, reinvestment, or ROIC. Beyond that, there is nothing. But there'll also be 100 companies which will move from the high PE basket to the low PE basket. But the markets on general, and this will keep happening every year, every 3 years. You see that there's a complete shift. You take any 3-year winners, and we've done this exercise from the start of NSE. The pattern is broadly the same. You've got these 50, like 10% of the basket moving to this basket, and 10% of the basket moving to sometimes a telecom, sometimes it's something else. So if the stock doesn't make a new high in 1-2 years, on average, there is no guarantee. On average, you've made a mistake. Mr. Market is inefficient for 3 months. Mr. Market can be angry, sad for 6 months. But Mr. Market is not wrong beyond 1 year. That is where an investor is wrong.
That's your cutoff. But Mr. Market can be wrong for 10 years also, Raamdeo ji will say. It can be till you become bankrupt.
Yeah, the last sentence you said, market can be truly wrong for very, very long time, I'm telling you. Look at the PSU valuations, low single digits. It's staring at you. Look at SBI. It came to like literally 150, 160, but 0.4 book, 0.5 book. And it stayed for years, almost a decade. How do you say?
In my humble opinion, Raamdeo ji, this is my very humble opinion.
No. See,
a business which doesn't make 1.5% ROA in a 10% leverage business will never be able to do ROA into leverage equals to ROE. If your ROE is less than 15% in a financial business, right, where your cost of capital will be minimum of 13, 14%, it deserves that price to book. Because if today SBI's, let's say, ROE is 17%, SBI's ROA is 1%. Why would anyone buy business models where ROA itself is 1%?
Maybe
but
we
you
can
have to
discuss
look at
it
what
outside.
you're paying, no? You're paying 3 times for HDFC Bank. You are paying 2.5 times for ICICI Bank. You're paying 0.6 times for SBI at some point in time. So you look at the ROA in the context of what you're paying for it.
No, so we don't call ourselves being deep value investors, and we don't believe large, consistent value will be able to get created in.
So
Yeah.
See, if there are a million guys in the market, there are a million ways of making money. And you don't have to agree with the other guy. So he has found a way to make money and he's telling his strategy honestly. That's it. We got to clap for that.
And value investing in banking is not the right way. Book value itself is a useless parameter because you can lose 4 or 5% of your assets and your book value goes down. Like Bank of Maharashtra, book value went from 73 rupees to 3 rupees in a 2-year period.
You want to counter that? Please go ahead.
You look at the retail delinquency of SBI Bank for the last decade, and that's lower than any private bank you can pick up, right? So if you are of the
Including
opinion,
HDFC Bank.
including
Including
HDFC,
HDFC
including ICICI Bank, right? So if you formed an opinion that corporate delinquencies, seen the end after the 2015 AQR by Raghuram Rajan, then your 1% ROA is not today, but you can definitely make a case for that coming through over the next few years. And when you are getting that asset at 0.3 times book, which we got it at, and made an absolute case for that to go ahead.
From Kanika now. So how does you work with machine learning? You have a proprietary framework. How does all this fit into your framework?
Yeah, I think we're absolutely at the other end of where we started from. But to Amit's point, by the way, we don't consider PSUs in our universe at all, because what we found is over long periods of time, you're likely to be better off deploying that money into something else. I think we discussed a lot of things here in terms of when to sell, how do you decide how to value companies, what's the right sort of waves to catch. And for us, at Upside broadly, what we think is that, Mr. Market is broadly right. The frameworks are constantly changing. The equation that Bharat Bhai was talking about is constantly changing. Right? There are years in which P is very important, and there are years in which growth is very important, or some combination of that. So the reason we're using machine learning is to say, look, I have no idea what is the right fundamental framework that works today. So why don't you tell me? And that helps us decide how to sell. So we're never making a sell decision, we're making a redeployment decision, which is to say, okay, we've held this for a year. Is it still a good buy, or is it still a good hold? And if it's not, again, you're ruthless about it, and you just get rid of it and you buy something else. It's constant opportunity risk that you're trying to solve for as far as using machine learning goes.
Fair enough. So what I hear from you both, in fact, sorry.
No, I wanted to make a point there. To say at points of time this is attractive, and at some other points of time something else is attractive, is a view of the externality of market injected into the model. Value of a business is an intrinsic discovery. External noise or amplification is merely expressing that internal character into an opinion at a point of time. And to say that sometimes this is important or that is important is probably paying too much respect to that noise rather than to the intrinsic character of the business. That is the only limited point I'll make.
Yeah,
This is what you say
classic
is
business versus stock, right? Where we started that conversation, which is, are you buying a business or are you buying a stock? And I guess that's where the big difference, as you move more and more towards technology, you're less looking at what is market penetration or what is etc. And more.
This is the point I was making, that unemotionality is a correct diagnosis. But to say that at particular point of time, something will assume greater salience, and at other points of time, something else will, probably is a misnomer, because all of them need to be in a healthy salience combination together at all times for it to create the value and the magic. Anything, if we say that growth is not important, then I think we'll be making one kind of a judgment, which probably, in my opinion, is erroneous. To say that character of the growth is not important, again, will be another kind of an error of similar kind. To say that valuation is something that can be disregarded in the case of some of these carcinogenic new age businesses is a kind of an opinion that one is dishing out. But I would say all of the valuable traits are important, and they all must cohabit in a healthy coexistence at every point of time. Our ability to make a good amalgamation of this and continuously remain on a right kind of a judgment is our psychological makeup as well as skill set.
So my understanding, at least of both of you, in slightly different ways though, is that you're playing the odds as opposed to Bharat Bhai or Raamdeo ji, who are completely focused on a company, their business model, their longevity, predictability, sustainability, etc. at a given price, you're scanning the market to see what are the relative opportunities and can I optimize on that. Am I correct?
The business model, growth, reinvestments are the benchmark. Without that, you can't make money. You're just trying to optimize. So that is a given. You need that. You will never be able to make large uh, wealth in any stock over any 3-4 year period if it doesn't have growth, high ROICs and reinvestment, because ROC is useless measure if you don't reinvest at that. So the value of a stock is the amount of cash you generate, how much you can reinvest, at what ROIC you reinvest, and competitive advantage period. I know we are running late, but it's a very large and long debate. But we try to buy decent business models which are needed for large wealth creation. We will not buy very mediocre or bad quality business models, because if you make money, like today I was speaking to a portfolio manager, he made money, tons of money in steel stocks. Now he's bought sugar stocks. Because if you start buying, going down the quality curve, the first time you make money, the second time you make money, the third time, whatever money you made in the first 2 times and more will go away. So this is our learning over last 1 decade, but our learnings also keep changing, our frameworks keep changing, and we keep, we keep learning. We are, as Bharat Bhai said, we are students of the market. So what I think today, and if I think the same things 3 years from today, that means I've learned nothing. I should say that in next 3 years, my broad thinking will remain same, but some things will change, because you keep learning new things. A student means learning.
Just one point there. I think the final investing framework to my mind, the final investing framework, so there are principles which are like scaffolding. Then there are, the kind of strategies which are improvised from time to time. And then there are facts which you learn and you relearn or change. And I think considering principles is temporary ones is one of the biggest mistakes to make, in my opinion. There are many times when it is tempting to think like that, and there are many times when markets will make you behave like that. But there are things which are relatively more fundamental, and then there are things relatively probably more amenable to the changes and modification. I would not underestimate the principles, the worth of the principles or the strength of the scaffolding.
Sure. Sorry, we're really running out of time, but one question each, very quickly and very quick answers.
One question, I had for Raamdeo ji, and, maybe I can ask on behalf of all three of us, that yes, we are learning how to invest from, true investors like yourself, but we are also running our individual companies, right? So, Kanika runs AI, Amit runs, I run Buoyant. So, when you first start investing, right, you create that investment baby yourself. Then at a certain point, you have to decide that I'll step back and let somebody else run the fund, which people, the entire investors associate you with. So how difficult is, when you grow bigger, is, letting go of that decision and the will to just run the money yourself rather than allow a professional team to run it?
As far as my case is concerned, Motilal was case, there was always a fund manager. I knew I cannot do what my diary is very divided in the corporate, and I cannot run the amount of running fund manager actually does, attending con call, visiting, all kinds of nonsense. So I mean, it's really time consuming, I mean, so particularly invested in a company, वो आप उनके दमान बन जाते हो, तो उनके यहाँ, so after 5-6 years, you start becoming family member, so you have to do a lot of stuff. So that only professional fund manager 24/7, and that's why generally we have a system of one fund, one manager, dedicated. So he lives that particular fund. So I am very clear that I can guide everybody, and I can say something is wrong or something, but it has to be the fund manager. I mean, I can run a fund, but then I'm useless for corporate side. So I don't have any doubts that there is a professional fund manager. And when you wear the cap of entrepreneur, then you have to find a able fund manager whom you can guide, of course, but you got to separate the role of management as an entrepreneur and the role of a fund manager. That's what I think.
Quickly, you want to ask a question?
Yes, about the capability of the fund manager. A lot has been said about the ethics of the fund manager. How do you judge the capability of, there's a left side which is known, the past. There's a right side which Bharat Bhai always teaches me, is unknown. How do you judge that this entrepreneur will keep pivoting? Because typically industry growth will go down to 10-15% beyond the size in 3-4 years. How do you say, like let's say Bharat Bhai in Bajaj Finance, it started from 1 deck. Now it's at 40 decks, if I'm not wrong, 32, 40 decks. Astral started with 1 pipe business. Now it's into adhesive, now into paints. How do you say that this promoter will keep pivoting? And basically, this guy has that capability, not the ethics part. That is the easier part. The capability, which is the more difficult part.
No, capabilities are relatively, so to say, more tangible. And to that extent, they can be reasonably correctly diagnosed fairly in a shorter time frame. But character takes time to reveal, because the character is actually tested in adversity, not usually in the good times. And therefore, character is something you need to have a patience to find out over a fair period of time before you make that judgment. And both are important. Ultimately, capability gets multiplied when character is applied to it. Capability is multiplied when efforts are applied to it. But capability is divided when ego is applied to it. And therefore, many of these work as a combination. And therefore, we as investors also need to have a patience to find out all that we reasonably need to find out about the management. It's tempting to put a plug in the socket and switch on and the light comes out. If the life were to be so simple, it would have been great. But judging the managements, we need to have a greater patience. We should not be quick fire in that decision making, is what I would think.
Sure. So on that note, I'm going to just close this discussion abruptly because we have completely overshot our time. Thank you very much for your rapt attention, and all you stalwarts here, thank you so much for enriching me.
And at times, I'm saying an unsolicited comment, but because I know Mahalakshmi for a long time, in the hurly-burly world of media and the kind of circus that generally it is, here is one person who stands by some kind of ideas and principles.